Thank you everybody for coming today. We're doing a little workshop on how to rent apartments and how to rent homes if you're interested. We have 3 speakers. I was going to say 2 because I had invited 2. We have a guest actually that's joining us today. One's from Eagle Ridge, and that is Trish Roberts. And she'll be speaking first about talking about how to rent apartments, things that you should look out, things like that. And then following her from Prudential, we have Lindsay. So we're just going to pass the mic, and if you have any questions as we go through here, just raise your hand and I'll bring a mic over to you so that we can record this. We are recording it, so it's going to be on our website. So if you haven't checked out the new MWR website, do so, and then sooner or later we're going to have these out there. It takes a little time to do the editing that needs to be done to make them, 508 compliant. So they'll be out there, and then you can go out and check it up if there's something that you questioned about what was said. Also, if you have any questions, you can either leave them with me if they're not answered here today, or you can contact each of the parties. Their information's in front of you, and just ask directly. If you choose, when you signed in out on the table outside, if you choose to give your privacy information to them, there is a statement that needs to be signed and returned to me. So please do take the time to do that. With that being said, I'm going to pass the mic over to Trish.
Thank you. Hi, thank you all for coming. This is Becky Rothwell, who works with me. She's the assistant manager at Eagles Ridge Apartments, and I am manager member. I do have an ownership in part ownership in Eagles Ridge. So I've been there since the beginning. We built it. I was involved in the building and 14 years ago. We're a 108-unit apartment community with 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. We're located 2 miles west of the W.K. Kellogg Airport out in the Fort Custer area. We are set on 26 acres with 5 buildings of apartments and then a community center and maintenance building. So we've got a lot of green space around us, which is a positive. We're what's called a conventional market property, so everyone qualifies the same way. There is no federally funded federal funds involved in our property. It is privately owned. It is the only property that the owners own. We're not have several properties, or we self-manage. So the type of property influences or impacts the pricing and selection. So others that are related to government subsidies would be Section 8, which is a voucher program you may or may not have heard of. The vouchers are issued by the local housing authority. That would be in Battle Creek Housing Authority. The funds are through HUD. And basically the properties that accept Section 8 are accepting a reduced rent, or this voucher applies to the rents. So it reduces that person's out-of-pocket rent. Currently in Battle Creek, the Section 8 voucher program has no more funds or no more vouchers available until they expect 2014 or 2015. So the other properties you'll sometimes hear about are income-based. In these, it would be minimum wage or minimum income requirements or maximum income requirements. So minimum income requirements are typical of a conventional property like ours. Excuse me. Maximums would be a property that was built or renovated using federal funds. And so in exchange for those reduced dollars from the government, then they have to accept or qualify certain individuals. And so that's how that kind of gets separated. Fair housing. I'll just read the statement in the PowerPoint. Under the Fair Housing Act, no person shall be subjected to discrimination because of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin in the sale, rental, or advertising of dwellings. Fair housing affects the way we greet. We would be required to greet every person that walks in our door the same way. I hope it's not necessarily just because it's required we do that, but if we smile at one, we smile at the other. If we welcome you to Eagles Ridge, we welcome you. We welcome the next person that walks in the door. Our introduction, do we handshake? Do we say our names? All of that, we need to make every good attempt to handle that in the same way for anyone who walks through our door. The sharing of information. We need to say the same story to all. We need to share. I've provided brochures, so if I'm going through the information, I don't skip because I've judged something about the person. I tell everyone the same thing, give them the same information. Offering tours, performing tours. I don't cut the tour short for any reason. If I show our storage area, our mail center, we have mail central locations in each building. If I show them that mail area, if I show them the fitness center, I need to do that routinely. It just needs to be a part of what you normally do. Selection criteria. We have a written document of selection criteria that we provide people, and the main thing with all of this is consistency. You just need to be consistent with everyone who walks through the door. Fair housing includes pets. Does our pet policy apply? Not all properties allow pets. We happen to allow pets. We have limits on numbers. We have limits on size. In the case of dogs, we have limit on breeds. And that's our prerogative. That's just what we do. We have fees. We have, in our case, we do non-refundable pet fees. One pet is $250. Second pet's $350. That is non-refundable. There are other properties that would have deposits. When you hear deposits, that will be refundable towards the end. It will apply to any damages that management company deems a result of having that pet. There's also pet rents involved. In our case, we have $25 for a cat, $30 for a dog, and that's a monthly thing. That's very typical of our area, but those are the things you should ask as far as pets, as far as the upfront, and then a recurring monthly. As far as service pets, every property, even if they don't accept pets, in our case, it wouldn't be that unusual, but other properties must accept service pets. They cannot charge for service pets. And in our case, even though we charge for pets, we would not charge for a service pet. Companion pets, there is a distinction. And if someone has a medical reason, usually there is a doctor's note or release involved in that, and a person in need of a companion pet, whether it's for alerting for some health issue, if it's for emotional stability, if someone provides us with that, we accept that pet and we may not charge for it. Reasonable accommodation, modifications for accessibility. If someone needs a grab bar and there isn't one in the apartment currently that they're moving into, we make that accommodation. It's reasonable to require that. Now, we can charge the resident if we so choose. Most cases we don't, but we, need to do that. The other thing we've done is we've added a ramp for someone. There wasn't a convenient ramp near one apartment, so we did add a ramp. We have ramps at all locations, but it wasn't convenient for that particular location. So we added a ramp. The other thing was like special toilets. We've switched out toilets before to accommodate someone's special needs. So the rule is modifications for reasonable accommodation. Availability. When you're shopping for apartments right now, especially, apartments have been leasing like crazy over the last few years, mainly due to the housing market. And so sometimes you're going to find that apartments have an abundance when you call. Now, you may judge that, but that no one else wants to live there, so I don't think I want to live there because they've got so many openings. One opening, you may have just hit it right. That happens a lot in our case. Yesterday morning I was there and I had no apartments to rent until October, and at the end of the day I had one for September because someone has chosen to leave.
I have no intention of staying in the apartments that we're staying in now. So our lease is up next June. When would be the appropriate time to look for another apartment?
Okay. I would suggest within 3 months of moving, even before perhaps. We have, at Eagles Ridge, not all properties are the same. How we work it, we have what we call a reservation deposit. It's $300. It happens to be the same amount as our security deposit. If you come to Eagles Ridge, you like what you see, then we always encourage you to place a reservation deposit because it puts you next in line for the apartment of your choice. It's totally refundable until we both have agreed to a particular apartment at a particular time. So that deposit may be refundable for 4 or 5 months. The other thing, if you don't want to place a deposit, people are uncomfortable giving strangers $300 even if we've signed something. We will call you. We will always call you. We go through our cards or visitors cards. But we also, if you specifically said, please call me, we have you on our call list. But you won't be the first one called without that deposit. We do give the opportunity, and then we usually give the person 24 hours to get back to us. So, but I'd say just check it out at your leisure over the next few months. Check out where you want to live, but probably submit the application 3 months in advance. And 3 bedrooms, if there's a need there. There's just few properties in Battle Creek that have 3-bedroom apartments. They're hard to come by usually. We happen to be one of those communities. So, waiting list, you're going to think it's a top performer. We feel that way. But, there's a lot of reasons why that happens. 2 month out, awesome property. Does any of it mean anything? It does, but there's can be background reasons for all that it happens. So, as I said, occupancy changes every day. A partner's death. Someone who's stayed, been with us for 10 years, but they're ready to move on now and want to be with their family that's in another location. Job relocation, family crisis. Those things come up in people's lives, and so it's never predictable. The screening process. Typically, I can't speak for everyone, but I believe that most properties do an internet-based screening. We're going to check credit score. In our case, we're looking for a credit score of 550 or above, no more than 3 collections. Then we do run criminal. You're in the selection criteria that I mentioned earlier. You're going to have this defined, what that minimum score is, what the collection tolerance is. Criminal, it's going to tell you what we're looking for. No felonies in the last 10 years, no physical or drug-related incidents. There's some tolerance for misdemeanors, depending what it is, but ours is spelled out. You will know. And so in looking at the selection criteria, sometimes people will not be certain. And I said, I'll say, look it over before you give us that $30 application fee, because I don't want to take your money if you know, but I can't tell you because I haven't seen it. So we just, try to be thorough and upfront. We do check previous landlord history, usually just for the previous 5 years is what we do. And then we confirm income by verifying employment or verifying a source of income. Some people don't have a source of income for whatever the reason. We do look at income to be 3 times the monthly rent, so someone can qualify if they provide some, like a bank statement that has enough to pay 3 times your annual rent, actually. So we're just looking. And the 3 times or the 1/3 is typical because what you're trying to do, you don't want to saddle anybody with what they can't handle because it's not good for you and it's not good for us. It just becomes a tension thing.
So in regards to the 1/3, do you also look at non-taxable monies that come in, like the GI Bill?
Yes, we do. We look at education loans. We look at, that kind of thing, the GI loan, whatever income could be applied to housing. If it's restricted for use and not housing, then of course not. But yes, if it's not restricted for use. Becky might be able to help me on that because she's like, oh my gosh. There was a restriction based on education. I think if it makes up 25, okay. If it makes up 25%, then we look for a higher security deposit. So.
Who do you check this 5-year history? From my record when I fill it in the application, or you find on your own those previous?
It can be in two ways, and pretty much exactly what you said. When our application, and most, will ask for your recent landlord history. So you're going to provide where you previously lived. And so we'll pick it up that way from what, you have stated, whether it's locally or in another state. We also, when the credit report comes back, it lists where you've lived in the past. And so we can follow up on that. Now, if it's longer than 5 years, we probably won't. And especially when it's local, we'll recognize that it's Glen Valley or it's the Arbors or whatever. And then we will contact them if it's in the last 5 years.
In the person who does not have one?
It is
the first rental?
Yeah, it is. It won't be held as a negative. It's just another ability of ours to screen, but it doesn't impact you negatively by not having previous rental history. Yeah.
And did you say that was after tax income?
No, it is gross income. We cannot give you a credit report, but we can let you look at your credit report. But what we do is give you the contact of the credit agency that we are getting this information from, and then you, by law, may contact them and ask for a copy of the credit report. If we don't approve you for residency, we must send you that in writing. We will call you and say, we're very sorry, but we will also follow up with a letter as to what the circumstances were. And on that letter, we'll say who to contact.
So do you get from all three agencies or just one agency?
We get one. TransUnion is who we use.
Okay, so it's a FICA score.
Correct. Can the selection criteria be adjusted? Yes. Say everything else looks great. Your credit score is fine, good landlord history, but your income's low. We might ask you for a cosigner, a qualified cosigner, and that cosigner is going to qualify in the exact same way that you have. Then that cosigner will be equally responsible with you, joint and several. We might increase your security deposit. If you fall in, like on the 550, if everything else is great, but you were at 530, we might increase that security deposit. So there are a few little ways, but if two of the parameters that we're looking for are below what we're looking, usually not. There's usually not an exception. Usually there's no exception to landlord history. If we get a poor landlord report, like you were late every month, you were evicted, those types of things, that will probably disqualify you. Now, usually the security deposit can be no more than 1 1/2 times the rent. There's also a chance of we've had a few people that want to prepay for the whole year, and that can't be, that needs to be their request, not a request of ours, because we would be breaking that 1 1/2 requirement. So then what we've done is ask the person to put in writing that they have requested it. They know that it is not a secure, we've acknowledged it's not a security deposit, and the balance remains as a credit on their account. We don't bill it out right away. We just keep applying that credit on a monthly basis. Your application, there's an application fee. Thing to ask is per application or per person. In our case, it's $30 per person for the application. The number of people allowed per apartment. It's not a bedroom requirement. That sounds funny, but it's not. In our case, it works out to 2 people per bedroom. So in our 2-bedroom apartments, we can have 4 people. Our 3-bedroom apartments, we can allow 6 people. But it's not really a per bedroom. It's a square footage requirement. And it just turns out that in our case, it's an easy explanation for us, but it's like 200 square feet per individual. Now, in the case of a baby, under 12 months, you don't count that person as an occupant, or that baby as an occupant. But once that baby is 1 year old, it becomes an occupant. So what we do at renewal, if they've exceeded the number, we've made contact with them prior to this, but we will send them a letter. We'd like you to renew, but we're going to need to move you to a 3-bedroom. Or if they're in a 3-bedroom and that puts them over the 6, we're really sorry we can't renew, but we've exceeded the occupancy requirements. Leaseholder.
And how do you find those additional people or their birth date or when they become 12 months or older?
On the application, we have the leaseholders and we have the occupants listed. And they will have listed any child. And
with that birth date?
On the children, it's the age or birthday? I think it might be age. It's the age. And so that would be how we would know. Did I answer your question? Okay. Leaseholder, they're the ones that are joint and severally financially responsible for the lease, and they are the ones that will ultimately, if there's past due rents, if we have to go to court, if the end there's money owed on damages, anyone that has been signed as a leaseholder will be responsible. Occupant has no financial responsibility. In our case, we require that anyone 18 and older in the apartment, unless they're a child or an offspring or whatever, that they've got to be listed as a leaseholder. But so in the case of a family, we're not going to have an 18-year-old student of the parents be listed, but friends, roommates, we're going to have everybody listed as a leaseholder. A resident is everybody. Whether you're an occupant, you're a leaseholder, you're our resident. You reside at Eagles Ridge Apartments. I think I kind of went over the reservation security deposit earlier. In our case, it's $300. They are refundable deposits. In the case of the reservation deposit for us, we apply a 2-year security deposit at move-in. So it's not extra. It applies in the security deposit at the end of your lease term or when you vacate our property. We apply it to any damages that were incurred and then refund any balance to you. Insurance. As you move into our community or into your apartment, that blank slate, our insurance covers it. But as soon as you bring a personal possession in, we encourage you to get your own renter's insurance. And that will cover all your possessions. We've found, not guaranteeing this, but by getting renter's insurance through your typically it would be your automobile insurance provider, it's typically $125 per year. Parking lot accidents, this comes up. There's no responsibility of the property or of management. It's private property. It's just like if you were at the grocery store or any place else. It's an individual thing. In most cases, your own insurance is going to cover it. If you know who did it, we encourage, contact, and hopefully people can, resolve however that should be. But there's usually no involvement on the property, although we will try and facilitate if we can. I mean, just hooking people up if you know which car and that type of thing. The inspection. Prior to move-in, in our case, you'll tour a model. Normally speaking, you won't get to see your actual apartment because it's not available yet. It's still being lived in. So if you have any discomfort at all about signing your name and paying for an apartment you have not seen, the particular apartment, before you sign, ask if you can see it. So then you know it's in the same clean, good condition that the model was. But it is your, you certainly have that right to ask to see it before. The checkoff list, you're going to receive a checkoff list at move-in. It's really for you to go through and see let us know the condition, how you feel the condition is. In our case, if we see something, we tried really, really hard and we do a really great job, but wonder if we overlooked something. Then we will, when you bring it in, we'll both sign. We'll give you the pink, black back copy, and then we'll write up work orders. So if we missed, like there was a crinkle in a blind and we missed it, we'll write up a work order to replace it. Those types of things. If there's a little scratch, say, in the countertop, and I'm talking a minor scratch or something that really can't be repaired maybe, we'll note it. And so you don't get charged in the end for it. So, and it's important we give you 7 days after moving in to return that checklist. It's important for you to do so. Otherwise, the property can go back to, before you moved in. And of course, our position, or most places' position, is going to be, it was pristine. It was beautiful. So, the living in an apartment community or in rental housing is, were your expectations met? What we're trying to do is provide you with responsive maintenance. So responsive maintenance, and this is how you can evaluate. We try and do, I would say 90%, 98% of our calls are same day. If it's not same day, you're going to know why. Because we have to call an outside tech in, or they've been crazed, and I'm really, really sorry, but they'll get to you tomorrow. But things that can't wait, we stay late. I mean, that's just how it is. Responsive office, that we get answers to your questions. If you have concerns, we respond to them. Smiles from staff, signs of maintenance. Are the corridors clean? You could ask, how often are these corridors cleaned? Grounds, are they groomed or not? Any litter, amount of green space. Ongoing maintenance. Do you see people working? It's a good indicator of if they're trying to maintain the property. We happen to do biannual maintenance. We come in, replace furnace filters. In the fall, we replace all the smoke alarm batteries. We test the smoke alarms in the spring biannual, drain water heaters, all that type of stuff. Twice a year, we're going to do that. You're going to be notified ahead of time. If you want to make an appointment, you may do so. Or on one specific day for one specific building, we'll be in doing that. Extras. We accept packages. We walk dogs, not regularly, just, then those particular times you just can't get home. We offer renewal gifts. We give you a choice of 3 things. We provide notary services. We have a resident workstation with a printer hooked up to internet that someone who doesn't have it in their apartment can use it. We offer custom painting. You do pay for it, but we'll do it. We install brackets for draperies, TVs. We just schedule an appointment and we'll help you out. Typically on the notice to vacate, there's 30-day notice. Some properties do have 60-day notice. We have an early lease termination fee. So if you have to break your lease, you need to give us a 30-day, but you also may pay an early lease termination fee equal to 2 months' rent. A key return signifies you vacated. You're going to pay rent until those keys are returned. So you may have left, but we don't know it until you've returned those keys. Security deposit disposition, it must be done within 30 days of the key being returned. What can it be used for? First damages, then outstanding rents and fees. If you don't get it, you can file in small claims if a property hasn't sent it back to you. You will be paid back double the deposit you placed. That's the penalty on the property's management's fault. The magistrate in small claims might allow damages to be subtracted, but that's their call. Where to begin and end?
If we don't get the small, Are these laws applies in the same in other state, or is it only in Michigan? The small claim costs twice the amount of deposit being.
I really don't know the answer to that question. I
But
know
it's-
that is here
It's
in
in
the state of
Battle Creek,
Michigan.
That if I have a $300 deposit and if they don't return in 30 days,
File small claims, and they can pay. You can receive double back.
right? But now I have to pay the fees for the court fees and all those
Correct.
things, and
Correct.
my time and bring them on the board. And how long does it take? I mean, does they resolve in one time, or do they go on
Yes,
for 2, 3,
my
4 times?
experience in small claims, but I've been on the other. I haven't been on that side of things. Just me taking someone else to small claims, and it is resolved that day. And you'll either get a, she will, in our case, our magistrate's a she, but they will sign a judgment, and then you have the opportunity to garnish.
Okay,
bank
so
statements
because
and-
sometimes the collection is a problem. because
Correct.
the-
But with that small claims judgment, you can garnish wages, you can garnish tax returns. So state tax returns.
Okay, thank you.
So internet sites in these day and age, they're, a popular way. I've listed some there, apartmentrating.com. Check your ratings as you're looking because it's a good indicator. Post after you leave a property. If you're happy, they'd sure love it. And if you're unhappy, it's good to let somebody know. Drive by, various days, various times. It's a good indicator, how busy, what the parking situation is. Best referral source is employers, coworkers, friends. Local police department. Some people are more concerned about security issues than others. That's usually based on personal experience. I always suggest that they ask or look up a call report for the local police department. Talking to the local police department, sometimes it's hard to segregate because our property a block or two down may not have the kind of history we have, but will be in that same segment. So call the police department. They'll tell you. Where we don't have calls out there, we don't have issues out there. Why rent? The advantages of renting: maintenance-free living, nearing retirement, peace of mind. You just don't want to be bogged down with all the things of home ownership. Mobility, job, family. In the case of death, not to bring it up, but there's no home for your family to sell. So at those end years, sometimes it's a good thing to have taken care of all of that and be residing in a nice apartment community. New to the area, it gives you an opportunity to learn the community first besides having invested in a home. We happen to have furnished temporary housing. We do rent our furnished month to month or longer. And a lot of times that's used by the business community and people that have moved to Florida, Arizona, and they come back here for the summer. They'll rent from us for 3 or 4 months in the summertime and call this their summer home. We also provide short-term leasing for our unfurnished apartments, so 6 months you could rent an apartment. It gets you a feel for the community. Quickly hurry up. Thank you for indulging me. I've been at Eagles Ridge Apartments for 14 years. I was there before it broke ground, and so the business has changed a lot in the last 14 years. Usually you think of younger people, just getting out, new jobs, whatever. It was always viewed as a temporary home. People didn't think of apartments as a permanent residence. They were always thinking of their goal to move on to home ownership. The housing bubble effect. Occupancy was low for apartments. Everyone could get a loan, so everyone was flocking to those homes, and then found they couldn't, handle it. There was a lot more involved in home ownership than just making a mortgage payment. The foreclosure effect increased the demand for apartment rentals. Rental rates have risen because of that. The good old supply and demand. It allows you time, moving to an apartment allows you time to improve your credit. It gives you just breathing time. It might be a year, it might be 3 or 4 years, but you've got time to improve that credit again. The lingering effects of what we've all experienced is home ownership is not the American dream anymore. It's not a guaranteed thing, and people aren't so enamored with home ownership. The need for quality upscale apartment communities is I think is going to be in demand because there's a lot of these people that this found, I want to be able to leave when my job, when my family needs me to. And so, but they want to have the housing experience, the experience of home ownership in a rental situation. So renting option has elevated. It's just not looked the same way as it used to be. And then our goal at Eagles Ridge is to provide our residents with a place they are proud to call home. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Trish. That was really full of good information. And it's funny because I sit here listening, and it's a lot of information I give to my customers with Relo. So I'm glad to hear you endorse what I'm saying and confirm what I'm saying. Thank you. There'll be more time at the end, hopefully, for questions. So if you have any more, please hold them for now. Lindsay, thank you. She's from Prudential, and she does the property management for Preferred Provincial. I can't even say it. I'm sorry. Thank you. You have the floor.
That's fine. My name is Lindsay Dornbos, and I am the Director of Property Management for Prudential Preferred Realtors. And I am a licensed real estate agent. However, my background was always in multifamily property management. So I was a regional property manager that handled large apartment developments and things along those lines. And Prudential recruited me because obviously with the turn of the market, there is a very, 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 very large number of single-family homes that are now in a position where owners want to rent them as opposed to selling them because they might not be able to make what they need to on them, and or they might have to be moving for different job opportunities because of some job loss here in Michigan, and or just simply because it's become a very big investment business. Rental for single-family homes is a very, very, very busy business. Kind of like Trish was talking about, everything kind of going very quickly. With single-family homes, they go even faster. So some of the properties that I even listed on the ones that we have here today, I just updated it yesterday morning, already have applications on them. They go very fast. But Trish did a really good job of going through all of the, I guess, very detailed rules and regulations and things along those lines with qualifications and things along those lines. But I'm going to go through just some basic things that if you're looking to rent single-family homes, so you're dealing more on a private relationship with a private owner, things to be looking out for. And then out of curiosity, do we have anyone here who's actually considering being a landlord? Just so I know. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to go over a few of those pieces, just kind of things you want to watch out for, but it's going to be fairly informal. So if you have questions, just let me know. Okay, so on the first side of my handout that I brought, we're going to just go through this specific handout, if that's okay. The first part of this handout that I brought is more for the prospective tenants. The first piece of it talks about some different resources that you can use when you're looking for a home. Like I said, things go very quickly, so if you don't feel like you're getting a response, email is the best place to start, going online and looking at something. And then if you can't, you should definitely contact over the phone as well until you are able to get some kind of a response from a property manager or from a landlord. A lot of times, landlords may not even call back if the property gets rented, so just look to see if that ad is outdated. A lot of people don't look to see how recently the ads were posted, and if it's been posted more than 2 weeks before, it's possible if you don't get a response back, it's already been rented. But these are some websites that I find have the most success. The information they provide is most credible. A lot of websites like Trulia and Zillow and things along those lines, they get their information fed to them or they take it, so it's not always accurate information. These are usually websites where people go on and they actually update the information themselves, and then it gets fed out to those sites from that information. Craigslist is a wonderful source because it does get updated very often. People put their information out there often, but be very, very careful about scams with Craigslist. It's something to watch out for. I get a lot of phone calls from people telling me they mailed money to somebody overseas that is not really the landlord of the property. You can go online and look up someone's tax records to get the name of a landlord, and then take an ad and say, "Hi, my name is Patrick Smith, and I own this house at this property." They know that information. It's all listed online. So just be careful about who you're giving money to, and never send money anywhere without seeing the property, meeting the person face-to-face, signing a lease, and receiving keys or seeing the keys that are there for you upon your signature. Okay? When you do apply for a rental, it's important to make sure that you know how your information will be secured. Private landlords are probably just operating out of their own homes. They might not necessarily have companies like ours who we obviously have to follow a lot of different regulations to make sure the information is protected. So you just want to make sure that, one, your information is going to be held under lock and key. And that does not just mean the front door of their house. It means under a locked file cabinet. And ask them what they do with that information once it's been used. How long they keep it after you move out, how long it's kept, and things along those lines. And then, of course, how it's disposed of. Yes.
Could they ask both the social security number and the birth date?
Yes, you are allowed to ask for a social security number
And the birth date?
and a birth date.
So
However, most companies that process credit don't need both to actually process someone's credit and criminal background check. Birth date is required. The social security number is not always required. So if someone were to refuse it, there are ways to get around that and still be able to get the information you need.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item. Make sure before you actually lease a property that you do inspect it. Like she was saying, you always want to see because the model might be different. You may go and look at a property, the home, and then before you actually sign the lease, you'll want to make sure that you walk through that property again and that you assess it before you actually move in with the owner present or with the property manager if that's the case. So that if there are any issues, you can kind of address them at that moment, but then take your 7 days, fill out your checklist, and if the landlord does not provide you the checklist, find one yourself and fill it out. Also, always take photographs. I recommend this for both the owner and for the tenant coming in. Photographs are very important. With your security deposit, a landlord must hold that deposit in a non-interest-bearing account, and you are allowed to know what that account financial institution's name is and the account number. They have to be able to provide you proof of that deposit, okay? So just make sure that your deposit is being held appropriately. When you submit work orders for the property, always make sure that you do so in writing. You'll want to make sure that even an email is sent to the landlord, even if you end up calling them on the phone and saying, hey, I just sent you an email, this is what happened. But you always want to make sure you have a written record of what is going on in the home, because at the end, if there is some kind of an issue, you want to be able to go back to that documentation. An email is best because it shows a time and a date stamp that you actually provided it to the owner. Also, if not, keep a ledger, a log of some kind of what you submitted. But one thing to keep in mind with a single-family home or renting privately like this is not maintenance-free living. An apartment is very nice because it is very maintenance-free. When you rent a single-family home, most likely you are going to be handling a lot of the maintenance yourself. That means snow removal, lawn care. You're going to be replacing your own filters. You might be putting the screens up in the spring in the spring, and things along those lines. So you just want to make sure that you know exactly what's going to be required of you to take care of that property, and that all should be detailed in your lease. If it's not detailed in your lease, that means it's the owner's responsibility to take care of it because it is ultimately their property. Along with repairs, yes.
Could I put the clause saying that anything less than $50 is like deductible or something in the contract when I lease the property? In other words, anything costing less than $50, I'm not going to be responsible. In other words, changing a light bulb or changing a faucet, sprinkler, or whatever, some of those minor items.
Not specifically, don't go by a dollar amount. Actually go through and list the specific things you will not be responsible for. For example, we put in ours, light bulbs are not, furnace filters, smoke detector batteries, if you had to do like a replacement on a screen, something like that, those things are fine. But like, let's say the toilet assembly broke on the interior of the tank, that only does cost like $25 to replace, but you want to make sure that gets replaced because that's the toilet. So it can't be for, and things like that. And you don't want your tenants making a repair to anything that involves plumbing because plumbing can become a really big issue, or electrical. I mean, just replacing an outlet isn't expensive, but if it's not done correctly, it can cause bigger issues. So I would just keep it to specific items, and you can list those items in your lease that you're not going to be responsible for. Okay? Mm-hmm. The other piece on that, and you already had touched on it as well, is renter's insurance is very important. Now, most leases just simply say that it is recommended. However, we do usually recommend that you create an addendum to your lease or change it in your lease that it is required, especially when you're dealing with a single-family home. And we do recommend it, too, for people who are renting apartments. But you should require that as a private landlord. Okay? When you pay your rent, you always want to make sure that you receive a receipt for that rent. Okay, this is something when you're dealing with someone privately, you might simply just bring the rent check over to their house, or you might mail it to them in the mail, but you want a receipt for that payment. If they can provide you a statement, sometimes, especially if you're working with a property management company, we have online systems where you can see your statement. That's sufficient. But if not, you need to make sure you receive a receipt from the landlord, either handwritten or an email receipt confirming they received your rent for the month of August in the amount of on this date. Okay, or keep a copy of your check and then your postmarked envelope that you send out. When you get ready to move out, you want to make sure that you do a move out inspection with your landlord. Request that your landlord is present, schedule a time, but they will probably want to do one before you move out and then do one once you have vacated and you are prepared to turn the keys over, because that's actually when you officially have released occupancy, and therefore any damage that's there at that moment would be damage that you're responsible for. And just let them know, most likely the owner's already taken photographs into their own checklist, but just make sure that you kind of do a double check on everything. Bring it with you at time of close and say, no, you see that was here when we were here before. That way, it kind of takes care of that conversation, and it's not just handled through the notice of damages, but you more can have an upfront conversation about it. As it was indicated, the landlord does have to provide that security deposit back to you within 30 days. And they do have to prepare a notice of damages to go with it. So just make sure that you're keeping track of it, but you do need to provide them a forwarding address. A lot of tenants don't remember before they leave, oh yeah, you need to know where I'm going so you can get that back to me. So just make sure that you give them your forwarding address, and once again, do that in writing. Send that via email if possible, or send them some kind of a certified letter so that they know that they have that. Make sure that all the utilities are transferred out of your name. When you move into a home, you want to make sure that you put everything into your name, and usually I recommend that landlords prepare some kind of a document that gives you all of that information ahead of time so that you can do that. But make sure that as of the date you are no longer responsible according to the lease, you have transferred everything back out of your name. And then if you do ever have any questions...
I do have a question on that. So if they are, I'm looking at the investor portion of this. If you own the home, but the utilities are in the renters' names, if you have a vacancy for a period of time, do you put it back to the owner's name, or does it just shut off?
No, you would probably want to put it back to the owner's name, only because you don't want your utilities shut off. One, because there's always usually reconnection fees, but additionally, you don't want your utilities ever shut off in the winter, especially because you could have frozen pipes and things along those lines.
Thank you.
I recommend doing that. And additionally, we'll cover it on the other side, but a landlord, in turn, when a tenant is getting ready to move in, you should also call, make sure service is transferred out of your name, but also let the Consumers Energy or Semco know, I am the owner on the account. Please put me down as the owner so that if there ever is an issue, I am contacted. A lot of the companies have started going to that because rental is so prominent now with single-family homes. Okay? And just that way, if there ever is an issue of shut off, you'll receive some kind of a notice before that does happen. Okay? Now, if you ever had any questions as a tenant or a landlord, and I'm going to go on to the next slide here in a second, but all the tenant landlord laws are online. And there is a PDF packet. I brought it here. It's a 56-page packet. I provided the website here, so if you ever just wanted to go on and just have it, I recommend everyone print it out if you are considering renting to someone and or if you are renting yourself, to kind of print it out and review it and just have it available to you. Samples of all the necessary forms you would need for leasing are in this particular document. So it gives you samples of everything you would need, and usually you can go online and find sample leases from RPOA or even from your local real estate chapters, like we have GCAR in Kalamazoo, but Battle Creek Association of Realtors, they usually have sample leases as well. And then just make sure they're up to date with all of the current state and federal regulations and requirements, because there's special language in each lease that's always required throughout the state and or federally regulated. Okay? So if you are a prospective landlord, so here are some things that I want you to kind of keep in mind, because these are things I get phone calls about very, very often. My primary client is the landlord. So the people who contact me to put their house into property management are the owners of these homes. And I manage a little over 150 single-family homes in the Southwest Michigan area, okay? And I get a lot of phone calls from owners who are not necessarily prepared to go into property management, because I think everyone thinks that property management is an easy business. And whether you are in rental and you're dealing with apartments or you are in single family homes, I will tell you it is not an easy business. It's a very demanding business. Tenants live in these houses 24 hours a day. They have a lot of questions. They have a lot of issues. And a landlord has to make sure that they're doing what they should be doing to maintain the property. And as a property manager, that's actually our job. Our job is to maintain the property, to make sure that the integrity of the property is being held, and that therefore you're not losing any value in your property. Okay? So these are some things you want to be sure of. First, as a landlord, you always want to make sure that you contact your lender to make sure that you have approval to actually rent your property. There is an occupancy note on the deed of your home, which identifies the fact that in most cases you're the resident. You do need to get written permission from your landlord from your lender if that's going to be different. You need to make sure that you get appropriate homeowners insurance with a rental rider. You should contact your insurance company and say, I'm going to be renting this property. What coverage do I need to have that be done? Because there is special coverage that they have in the event that your tenant starts a fire in the home, for example, or floods the home. And it's not because of something to do with nature. It's something that they did specifically. Okay. You should also ask your insurance company if they require any specific recommendations for the renter's insurance, i.e. a certain amount of liability coverage or anything along those lines. Okay. And the last thing you want to do is make sure that your home is registered as a rental if it's required by either the city or township. Battle Creek City obviously does require that you register your property as a rental, but if you go out into Nashville, for example, you're out of the limits there. You do not need to register your property as a rental. So it kind of just depends, but that's your requirement to do. You need to call, give them the address, and they will tell you if you need to register it as a rental. If you do, then obviously you follow all the process, which is going to be, most likely they're going to have you pay a fee and they're going to come out and do an inspection. When you market your property online, she touched a lot specifically about fair housing, but this is very important for landlords, especially private landlords, to know. When you are marketing the property, you cannot say, this home would be great for a family. You cannot say, this home would be great for a family with young children. You cannot say anything that would violate any of the fair housing protected classes. Okay, so it's best to just keep your marketing to the specific physical characteristics of the home. It has a great location. It has 500 square feet. It has this price. It will allow dogs, things like that. Okay. Also, private landlords, housing complexes obviously set their fees, they set their restrictions. You can do the same thing, but once again, you do have to follow the same guidelines. The 1.5 times the monthly rent is the limit for security deposits, whether you are a private landlord or you are an established conventional housing. So you do need to make sure you do those things, but you can set them and you can change them. You just need to make sure that you have written criteria that goes through your qualifications, okay? When you do have a tenant that applies, you want to make sure they actually fill out some kind of an application, they sign it. This is important. A lot of landlords rent to a friend, family member, someone they met through the work system. They don't ask for an application. They don't process them. You want to do a criminal background check. Just because you're friends does not mean they're responsible with their money. Does not mean they're responsible with their bills. It's very important that you do process an application on your incoming tenants. Be very, very careful, like I said, about the fair housing laws. I included the website there as well, to the fairhousinginmichigan.org. And that's a great resource to just be able to go and get any specific questions you might have. They'll be able to answer it for you. Additionally, for prospective tenants, if you ever have a question or feel as though you may have been discriminated against, it's a great place to find out if you have options to have it investigated. You always want to provide your incoming tenant, like I said, with a utility checklist, and this is where I mentioned that you'll want to make sure you have those transferred back into your name upon move out. And then touching on this just one more time, it's very important to remember that the relationship that you create with your tenant is a business relationship. Even if you rent to family or friends, you are not family and friends when you're dealing with the actual lease agreement. Do not do everything on a handshake. Do not do things verbally. Whether you know the person or you don't know the person, it does need to be in writing. You need to make sure that you get an appropriate lease. Like I had mentioned, there are samples in the actual document, or you can get them very easily online. But just make sure that if you have a personal relationship with somebody, you remove it when you're dealing with an issue. So if they're not paying their rent on time, you still need to charge them a late fee like you would do anybody else and be consistent about that practice. Because either way, whether you think you're giving them some leniency, the relationship is going to suffer. You're going to feel like you're not getting the rent. They're going to feel like you're being too hard. It's best to just take care of it and dissolve the business relationship as you can, and keep the personal relationship, or dissolve the personal relationship and keep the business relationship, whichever has to happen. But I will tell you, this is the biggest issue I see with private landlords, is that they don't think about that piece of it. They think, I know this person, they'll take care of the house, they'll do this, and that person thinks, I know this person, they'll let me do that, they won't have a problem with it. Those are two very assuming characteristics that do need to be defined, and that's where a lease comes in handy. Yep.
What's the fair amount of late fee? Is it like percentage of the rent, or is it like some lump sum amount, $50, $30, or?
In general, most people will charge on average $5 per day. However, if you were to take it to court, you're not going to get more than $25 for the month.
Okay. And as far as the bounce check and things like that,
You can charge whatever you actually get charged. I'd say $35 is about average, but really it's whatever you got charged from your bank. And you're usually going to be charged between $25 and $35. So find out what your NSF fee is and then put that in your lease.
and final question, how much percentage you charge for managing the properties?
We charge two different fees. The first is to market the property, which includes the marketing, tenant screening, and lease preparation. That fee is equal to 1 month's rent. It's a one-time fee, however. And then to manage the property monthly, it's 10% of the monthly rent.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Rental amount, right?
You can set
The-
your rental
the
amount at
fees.
anything you want as long as you are able to get it.
Right.
Yeah, but that's one thing that we do. I mean, obviously, in most cases, rental prices are a bit inflated, especially with single-family homes. Where you might be able to rent a two-bedroom apartment for maybe $700 or $800. A 2 to 3 bedroom home that is probably 800 to 1,000 square feet in the same area is going to rent $900 to $1,000. So. It depends on the
Yeah,
quality
me
of the
too.
home. It all depends on the quality of the property and the location of the property. But ultimately, there is a bit of an inflated rate for a single family home rental.
Okay, I got the microphone now, so. All right. I read it to this kid. He signed the lease agreement in April, and it does say $50 a month late fee on it. And he's been paying it because he hasn't been on time with his rent yet.
Okay.
He's been paying the late fees. Okay. He still owes me for July and August.
Okay.
And today's his last day to pay August without a late fee. So tomorrow my plan is to go to the courthouse and get a eviction notice for him.
A demand.
Right.
Have you sent him a 7-day demand notice yet?
That's what it is, a 7-day
Yeah.
demand? I
That's
didn't
where you
know
have to
what it was
start. You have to
called.
start with the 7-day demand. You can charge late fees. He can pay the late fees, how you charge them. I wouldn't charge more than $5 per day, but if you do take it to court, a judge probably will bring your late fees down to $25 a month. Just be
Even though my
mindful.
lease says 50.
Correct. Yeah, there's no legal, limitation. I wouldn't go beyond the $5 per day to put it in there. I think $150 a month is what the state limits in terms of the total amount. That's where the $50 per day or the $5 per day comes in. But ultimately, a judge is going to simply say $25 most likely for the month. That's what I've always been.
So for July, on July 16th, he owed me $50 late fee. Now, August 16th, I can charge him $50 again, right?
Correct. Yeah, if he hasn't paid the rent for this month, then yes. You can charge him a late fee per month, or however your lease dictates it. Your lease should say how often you can charge a late fee if rent is not paid.
Yeah, I think it's $50 per month.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully he pays me this afternoon. And I don't
Hopefully
have to
he
go to
does.
the courthouse tomorrow.
But, you can always send the 7-day demand notice. What that allows you to do is be able to start the court process. You can send that back in July. You don't have to go down and file court when the 7 days is up. You can wait 2 weeks if you want to, but you do have to send something because now you're 2 months out of rent, which means you're 2 months out of pocket on your own expenses. So it's just something to keep in mind. And the other thing too, and this is one reason why people shouldn't wait for people to pay their rent, is that the bigger the balance gets, the harder it's going to be to pay off. So it might be nice to say, oh, they'll get the money, they'll get it paid, but how much money in general will they get? You know how much they make because you should have confirmed that when they moved in. So if they don't make more than $1,500 in their paycheck every month and they owe you $1,400, when do you think you're going to get the money? So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, there's no reason to let things linger.
He's no friend, and he's got the money. He just isn't paying it.
Then that's the reason why I would take him to court right away. Yep.
How long it takes to evict, though? I mean, after that, there's a whole long.
I'd say about 30 to 45 days altogether. So you send the 7-day notice. So once your rent is late, whatever your lease dictates is your late date, then you can send them the 7-day notice. Once that 7 days is up, you can go down to the courthouse and you can file to get a court date to go ask for a judgment. That court date will usually be given to you within 10 to 14 days, I'd say. Okay. So that's a factor. Then once you go to court, if the judge rules in your favor, you'll receive a judgment, and that's another 10 days they'll have to pay or move out of the property. And then on that day, if they don't, then you have to file for a writ of eviction. That can take between 3 and 5 days for the judge to sign it and get it over to the servicing. And then they go post the door. They have 24 hours from the time the door is posted. So I'd say about 30 to 45 days altogether. That depends on you, though. Okay. Just a few other pieces here then. When work is brought to your attention, like I had mentioned before, you definitely want to make sure that you address it immediately because once again, you're trying to preserve the integrity of the property. Okay? And additionally, keep your records. Any receipts that you have, you can put on a Schedule E for your tax purposes. So you'll do your 1099 for your income, and you'll do a Schedule E for your expenses, which are your deductions. Obviously, a CPA will help you out with that. Always make sure you inspect your properties at least quarterly. Just to make sure that the homes are being maintained as they should be, and to make sure that those seasonal items are being addressed, i.e. gutters are being cleaned out, furnace filters are being changed, things along those lines. And then always refer to your lease agreement when you have issues. So if you have an issue, make sure that you actually check your lease to see what you're allowed to do. If it's not in your lease, you're not allowed to do it, most likely. And then, like I said, you must process your security deposit within 30 days. Did you guys have any other questions? Those are my basic pieces. And I did bring a sample of the tenant landlord laws if someone wanted to take that. And then I did bring 2 other brochures, which this does talk about our services if you were interested in our services specifically. And or if tenants are interested, it talks about just kind of what to look for when you're a tenant. And I did bring a sample of rental requirements for you, and then current availability and a service provider. This is a sheet about service providers. That utility list I was talking about. Any other questions? Since you're more my field because you're landlords.
Very good. Well, thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Trish. Thank you for coming with her.
Thanks for having us.
And again, if you have any questions that were not answered here, you can either email me or you have their contact information. They'll be glad to have you contact them directly and answer your questions. Boy, a lot of great information today. I appreciate that. I like that link that you sent, provided about the laws. That's awesome. I'm going to post it to my website now. Again, check out the new MWR website. Thank you, Prudential, for sponsoring us. And thank you for attending.